Good evening, folks. Welcome back to Celtic Fans TV. I've got Martin and Kevin with me tonight to talk about the 2022-23 fixture release. They were confirmed this morning, so we know what next season looks like for Celtic in the league. And we'll start by talking about those first 6 fixtures. So, Kevin, we'll come to you first, mate. We start against Aberdeen at Celtic Park, Flag Day, obviously, a day that everybody looks forward to. I don't think everybody was looking forward to a 4:30 kick-off on a Sunday, though.
No, I don't think they were. We could be here all day debating why that is the case. I think we were speaking about it off air. Like, I was thinking it's more a Sky issue. We're saying it's because of the 3 p.m. It's still great to see, no matter what time it is, that the flag is back at Paradise. So no matter what it is, it'll still be a full house. It'll be great to see, and it'll be a good game against Jim Goodwin, who's now had a full summer to rebuild his side in the way that he wants, post Scott Brown era at Aberdeen. So it'll be a very interesting game. Just gutted that I will be missing it. Obviously, it's a wee bit of a gutter, but I'm sure that, with who we've signed in a permanent deal with Carter Vickers already, we're going to see hopefully what happened with the carrying on of last season into this season, hopefully.
Absolutely. Those next 5 after Aberdeen are Ross County away, Kilmarnock away, Hearts at home, Dundee United away before that first derby against Rangers in the 3rd of September. Martin, you think back to our first 6 fixtures last season, where the squad was at. We had 9 points after the first 6 games. Well documented that we lost the first 3 away games. How do you compare those 6 there to last season?
In respect of how difficult they are, that's a brilliant question. I think it's Hearts away, Rangers away, Livingston away, probably our 3 toughest away games. Livingston just been one of those grounds that we struggle at, and Hearts and Rangers traditionally been tough places to go. I think the other one we slipped up on was it Livingston at home, Dundee United at home was the other one we slipped up on, Paul?
Yeah.
Can't remember which one it was, but it was a home game, the other one. I think it's a tough start. When I first seen the fixtures come out this morning, I was quite pleased, but you go through them one by one, you think Aberdeen at home, Aberdeen didn't have a good year last year, but as Kevin says, it'll be interesting to see what they do this year. It's a different regime for them, and Aberdeen's never an easy game. Our record against them is pretty decent over the years, but you never look at the Aberdeen game and think that's a shoe-in. As I say, albeit probably the record books would suggest otherwise. Ross County away, again, slightly different Ross County this year, but last year they were the informed team. Out with Celtic and Rangers, they were the 3rd best team in the second half of the season, and what a difference it made with Malky Mackay coming in. That they had some cracking results and some good games against us as well. So,
well, the 2 games up, they were really close against us, weren't they?
Aye, they were. The last minute winner. So Ross County away is not one you go up with loads and loads of confidence. Something about Ross County away, freezing, just small stadium. It's never one that you think are guaranteed to get the victory, and you don't often come away with a big win. And then Kilmarnock away, for a period of time, our record was okay up there, but it hasn't been brilliant over the years, and onto the carpet. And you think we should be beating Kilmarnock. They've just come up. They've not been great in the last couple of seasons, but not one again that you look at and think that's an easy one. Then Hearts at home. Hearts are talking about now they want to take it to the next stage. They don't want to be 3rd. They want to be splitting Celtic and Rangers and competing for the league, which I don't believe they will. But they were pretty strong last year, and it'll be interesting. They've strengthened, some would say, certain positions. They've made some signings already. So Hearts at home's not one of those games you look at and think that's easy either. Dundee United away, good other than the 1-1 to win the league. Good record against them last year. And then, of course, you finish that wee group of 6 games with Rangers at home, and that's a mouth-watering prospect. And I can't wait for that tie. But arguably 5 out of that 6 are ones where you're saying, that's not easy. And no disrespect to Dundee United away, suggesting that will be easy, because it won't. But 5 out of the 6, I think, are challenging fixtures, and therefore a tougher start than I would have liked, if I'm being honest. But compared to how we performed last year, it's different, because the fixtures last year were arguably equally as tricky, but a much stronger team, a much more settled environment, settled platform, and one we can go into with a lot more confidence.
Yeah, Kevin, as Martin says there, we've got to get into it in a much, much better position than we did those opening 6 games last season. and you would think we'd come out with more than 9 points for the first 6 games.
Well, I mean, I think any fan would be happy with the way we are now. We have a much more settled squad to go into those 6 games. They are tricky games. There's no getting away from it. But I think, when you look at them, and as much as Martin's brought them down individually, they're games that we should be winning because, as we all know, we are the champions, and that's why we've done it, because we have to win these games. And we have to get over this fear of playing on the carpet, because it's the same with Livingston, it's the same with Kilmarnock, it's even the same with Hamilton, because they've always been tough grounds, because we just can't play the same football that we would normally play on a grass pitch. But, I mean, I think, when you look at them, the home games, you want to win them, so that's 9 points right away. But, I mean, Dundee United away, I think, I would say that's a winnable tie, considering
a new manager as well, eh?
A new manager, which was a very surprising move, and the one that worries me out of them all really is the Ross County game, because it's always a notoriously tough game. But as I said earlier off air with Martin, they are severely weakened now by Charles Cook going away, so you just never know, and we could be here till the crews come home saying, like, where's the points coming from or whatever, but we just need to go and take it a game at a time, because that was almost a mantra last season. So yeah, I mean, bring it on is what I say.
It's difficult, innit, because you can never look at fixtures, Martin, and just count up points. That's not how football works. But that's what we're here to talk about. How does the path look like for Celtic next season? The derbies, obviously that one the 3rd of September. Then we've got the 2nd of January at Ibrox, the 8th of April back at Celtic Park just before the split, and then obviously there would be one after the split, as long as both teams make the top 6. So Martin, those derbies are always crucial. You think we ended up winning the league by 4 points in the end last season, and the 2 games arguably that won it for us. And I know, again, in hindsight, you can look back and look at drop points throughout the season and make up that 4 points. But the game at Ibrox that we won in April and the game in February at Celtic Park, you could say those 2 derby wins were what clinched us the title.
I mean, it's a 6 point thing, isn't it? If you lose it or you win it, it's a 6 point swing. And the game at home was a massive statement, because there's still a lot of questions being asked the team and whether we had the mental strength to go out and overcome what had been a really, really tough period for Celtic in that particular fixture. After us dominating the fixture for many years, it was a complete 360, and Rangers had started to dominate. So that was a massive statement for me that night, and we blew Rangers away in the first half and into part of the second half, and some would argue Rangers came back into the tie and into the game itself, and they did. But at 3-0 down, you would hope that they would have a period of dominance during that 90 minutes, and it's one of those where do you go and chase the game and win 5 or 6-0, or do you settle on the 3-0 and defend your lead? So for me, that was a massive statement. It was a huge turning point in the season, and we didn't really look back after that. And the 1-1 game was an interesting game because we didn't have to win it. A draw was as good as wrapping up the title. So it was one of those games where a draw was as good as a victory, really. The fans were desperate for a win. You always are in these games, but a draw was more than enough. Rangers had to win. We didn't, and therefore a draw was sufficient. These games are massive, but your reflection on last year when you look at, I think it was 4 out of the first 7 games that we slipped up on. I could be wrong, but I think it's 4 out of 7.
Yeah.
After that night, we slipped up in 3 games out of 27 games. It's unbelievable to think out of 27 games. I mean, you look back throughout history, and ordinarily, even your strong Rangers and your strong Celtic, they would slip up in 1 in every 4 games. That tends to be the way it is. But 3 out of 27 we slipped up in 1 in every 9 games. I mean, that's a sensational run. I think those games were Livingston at home, St Mirren away, and Hibs away. And St Mirren away was a night we never had anybody. Hibs away was just one of those frustrating games. We were really frustrated that night, I remember. And
2-0 those games.
Yeah. And then the 2 at the end of the season, Rangers at home and Dundee United away, it was just winning the league. That's what those 2 results were about. We didn't have to win those games. So you've both made the point, and I'm looking at the fixtures thinking, that might be tough, But you look at that period of real dominance, 3 out of 27. You can almost discount the 2 at the end of the year, and then say, well, a run of 31 games where we didn't really make a mess of it, and we were consistently good, and we'll carry that confidence into this season.
Yeah, and consistency is the thing that wins league titles, and that was the remarkable thing, Kevin, after that start we had last season, that the team found consistency, and as Martin says, dropped points in 4 of the first 7 games, and after that draw at home against Dundee United, you're thinking, we can't drop another point, and we almost didn't until we nearly clinched the title. The other difference this season to last is that we will be in the Champions League. So who knows who we'll face in the Champions League. The draw is obviously on the 25th of August.
Mm-hmm.
But we know now who we'll be facing the weekend after those games. And it's Livingston at home, St Mirren away, St Johnstone away, Hibs at home, Livingston away, and then Dundee United at home after match day 6. I think those fixtures could be worse. But having said that, before we come on, I was looking back. And Martin was right to mention earlier, the first home game against Livingston last season, we dropped points. We did drop points at St Mirren away as well in that fixture last season. And obviously, Livingston away, the first time we went there, we dropped points as well. So on paper, again, it's one of the ones where you can't look at it and say, well, they should be easy games because the points they need to be earned, Kevin. But I think they could be harder. I think we could have been worse off there.
Oh, it could have been. You could have been looking at a derby in there, definitely, because it's happened before. I think under Gordon Strachan, I think a couple of years, it was very much you're coming off the back of a European game and then you're straight into a Glasgow derby, and it can be that work in your favour or not. But Celtic have always, I think, not always, but in or about, they've always kind of consistently struggled as with a European hangover, and it's games you always worry about. And when you look at them, yeah, they could be worse, but you're looking at one of them, and the one that really sticks out for me is Livingston away, because it could be a home game, and who knows, we could maybe win 2-0, and you think, right, you're riding high, you get 3 points in the bag, whatever it may be, but you could be you could be crashing down to earth right away with a poor performance against Livingston, and it's maybe not detriment to the team, it's just because we do just tend to struggle there. But Hibs at home and Dundee United at home, I would see them as winnable ties as well as Livingston at home. But again, it comes back to we don't know who we're going to face. We know we're a pot 4 side, but we could be facing the likes of Real Madrid, who might give us a very tough game in the Bernabeu, or it might be Sporting Lisbon, who give us a right going over in the Jose Avalad.
We might have nothing to play for by match day 5.
Who knows? But I'd like to think maybe something, but who knows? But I think you just don't know, because you need to wait and see who you're playing, because it could go one way, whereby you're riding high in a good draw, a good win, who knows, and then you could come crashing down to earth, or it could work in your favour, whereby you just get on with it after the next game and just get straight back to domestic business and just reaffirm and reinforce our status in Scotland.
Martin, that's the challenge for the team this season, and I'm sure that will be at the forefront of the manager's mind when he's strengthening the squad, balancing like that step up to the Champions League and coming back to league duty at the weekend. We've seen it before. It's really difficult.
It's really difficult, and it's hard to say that it benefits you, but you do sometimes see teams being successful domestically and in Europe. I mean, prime example would be Liverpool last year, and punching above their weight a little bit in the league, you would argue, albeit they've got they've got a strong squad, right? But hanging on to the coattails of Man City and doing well, and albeit they didn't achieve what Celtic achieved all those years ago and get their quadruple, but they competed on both fronts. And not try to compare Celtic to Liverpool with regards to the resources that are available, of course not, but I think sometimes depending on how it's going in Europe, it can actually benefit you, because there's a real feel-good factor. The bit that worries me more than the fatigue and the challenge of trying to compete in all these games and the demands of playing all these games is subconsciously sometimes players, it can be the game before a big game. So Kevin's given an example there, you're going to play Real Madrid, right? And you're playing the game before that, and you're thinking subconsciously, I'm not getting myself injured. You give them 110% the way you normally would. We would hope as supporters that always happens, and it's a shoe-in, but it's that type of thing I worry about. And then you come away from playing Real Madrid, and again, subconsciously, you're playing, not meaning to pick any teams, but you're playing St Mirren at home. And how do you lift yourself to approach that in the same way you did the Real Madrid game? And sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have to go into those games and give 100% for 90 minutes, or you'll drop points. So sometimes I think we blame it on fatigue, but sometimes it's the mental element as opposed to the physical element, I think, for some of the time in the game before or the game after. But I genuinely believe if you're doing reasonably well in Europe, it can work in your favour. And I also think one of the other benefits is the players are fighting for their places as well. So if you're not in the starting 11 and you get a wee opportunity, fine, you've got to take that chance to try and get an opportunity to play against Real Madrid.
Mm-hmm. See, just on that, talking about sometimes Europe can help. We thought last season that the deeper Rangers went into Europa League, the more they would drop off. Particularly thinking about the semi-final when they'd been in extra time and stuff, and that's not always the case. We were the team that had the bigger rest period, but as you say, it doesn't always work like that.
No, I think in the league, did they take their eye off the ball? Did they take their foot off the gas? Did they have a and that's your original point? Did they
maybe earlier in the run, but as they went further, not necessarily.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was the fact they didn't have a squad good enough to win some of those games, because some of the games were dropping points. You're saying that should never happen. I think it was predominantly they didn't have a squad that was deep enough. When they got injuries or they were trying to rotate, it wasn't a strong enough squad in my opinion. Not any of my business, but that's just my opinion on what went wrong at Rangers. But I think the excitement of the Champions League, the buzz that the fans will get, as long as we're not getting absolutely hammered in every single one of the games, I think it'll be good for the club. I genuinely do, and I think it'll help us domestically as well. The bit that worries me is I think there's batches of fixtures in there, right? And I think when you look at that batch of fixtures from Hearts away all the way down to Rangers away, now the only good thing is it's kind of split up a little bit because of the World Cup, right? But there's a group in there of 9 games. Six of them are away, and out those 6 away games, 5 of them are our hardest away games. So Hearts, Livingston, Aberdeen, Hibs, and Rangers, they're all in that group in 9 games. As I say, there is a split between the World Cup, but in amongst all of that, you've got your last 2 Champions League games, and we've already talked about they might be meaningless, but hopefully they're not, and hopefully we're fighting for at least 3rd place in the group. In which case, those 9 hard domestic games and the last 2 Champions League games are going to be really, really tough. I mean, you look at when we come back from the World Cup, we start with Aberdeen away, St Johnstone at home, Hibs away, and Rangers away. Gee whiz, it's a tough run, isn't it? Those 4.
Aye, but that was my next point. Coming back for the World Cup, those 4 games, Kevin, are absolutely massive, and the away games in there could hardly be any tougher. And I mean, I don't know how many players we'll have at the World Cup. At least a couple, you would think. We know Japan have qualified.
Croatia, Juranovic will be there.
Juranovic will be there. So it's some big players.
Mm-hmm.
How deep they'll go, we don't know. But coming back, those fixtures are massive.
Yeah, and as Martin says, this season is going to be interesting just to see how not just Celtic but just domestic teams all over Europe handle this, because it's a very, very complex thing that we've never had to handle before, and I think we're still feeling the effects of fixtures being crammed in so much with like COVID, and it's now it was getting to a stage where now it was calming down, and now we're having a Nations League, and then we're straight into pre-season, then before you know it's Champions League and whatnot, and then now with the Champions League, it's in 3 2-week batches. They're doing it almost.
So condensed.
So you're going to have a lot of travelling depending on what your group, because you might be, God forbid, we have to go to Astana again or whatever. You could be like all the way there and then all the way to Madrid, or you just don't know how it's going to work in your favour. But I mean, you don't get any harder than Pataudry 8 days before Christmas. But I mean, if you were to come out of that with a reasonable amount of points, you wouldn't be saying too much about it, because the World Cup is going to throw up fatigue from the players that are there, but also how do we cope with it ourselves? Are we going to be like, obviously we're going to Sydney and whatnot, but it's hard to really adjust from domestic, going for it, games that really matter, to a friendly cup with a couple of big names, but then you're having to go straight back into it. Big game up at Aberdeen, it'll be on the telly hopefully, and you're hoping, I mean, who knows, by then it could be neck and neck again, and you really don't know how it's going to go. It could be like the last game at Pataudry, whereby we were 2-0 up, we thought we were cruising with O'Reilly and Jota scoring, and then before you know it's 2 each and you're on your edge of your seat, and if it wasn't for, let's say, a generous decision in our favour, then it was a very hard fought 3-2 victory. So again, without the risk of repeating myself, it's going to be a case of just we need to see how it goes this season with this.
I'm surprised. I didn't know how they were going to schedule it around the World Cup. But the World Cup final is the 19th of December, I think. And I know there's only 2 teams left by the time you get to the final. But, I mean, depending how far teams get, the players could have a really, really short turnaround, Martin. You've got to think if MD gets to the knockout stages, the turnaround from being in the Middle East at World Cup to coming back straight into those fixtures, it'll be really, really short. And the season is a wee bit extended. I think the last match day is the 27th of May, which is usually when the Scottish Cup final would be. So it's extended because of this, but I think the turnaround will be really, really short from a player's perspective.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like the impact of the African nations. I know it's different because World Cup's much bigger and lots more teams and lots more players, but it feels a little bit like that. And some of the teams will be thinking, particularly if their players are playing for the countries that are the favourites, they'll be thinking this could really impact us and make a big difference over what is a really busy period. Ordinarily, that festive period's always busy. It'll be interesting. We obviously don't have the winter shutdown this year. Not that it's necessarily been snowing every time we've had a winter shutdown, but maybe quite lucky in Scotland with the weather as well. The way things could go wrong, because that'd be the last thing we'd need when we're in the latter stages of the Champions League to be having to play midweek. We're playing semi-finals and quarter-finals and stuff. But it's busy, and obviously Scottish Cup final I think goes into June. No winter shutdown, busy festive period as is always the case, and as you say, the season's starting just a little bit earlier. So there's going to be a lot, and we're going to need to be able to rely on our squad. Last year at times, particularly in the early part of the season, we're thinking we'd be lucky if we've got 14 or 15 players that you could really rely on, that we felt were good enough to go in and make a good impact, that you weren't having to carry them through the game at times, or they were causing you a goal, or not scoring when they should be scoring, etc. But gradually that team's and the squad's got stronger and stronger. So we're not a million miles away from having a good solid 18 players that we can rely on, and 2 players in most positions, and we'll desperately need that for the season ahead. But the World Cup's going to be interesting. I've not quite figured out how many players, worst case scenario, will have gone to the World Cup, but it's not the full squad, thankfully.
Aye, we might sign some that are involved. Kevin, the big thing, I do want to touch on the squad before we finish up, and we'll briefly talk about some transfer speculation and deals that might come in. One of the big pluses of the Champions League qualification is that we don't have to navigate qualifiers, which is, I can't even remember what that felt like. It's so weird to have that shutdown and not already be preparing for like a Champions League qualifier in about a week's time. That's big for the players. It's going to be big for the manager, and surely we should see the fruits of that. I know it's maybe going to be impacted by the condensed season due to the World Cup, but surely we've got to come into these early fixtures, particularly in top shape.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the last time that Celtic were in a group stage without having to navigate it was Gordon Strachan's last season, when we had Aalborg and Manchester United and Villarreal in our group stage. So, I mean, it's a long time ago since Celtic felt that luxury. And it's great to see, and as Martin alluded to earlier, it's great to be back in the Champions League. It's where we want to see ourselves. We might not sign the quality of player that maybe needs you to be constantly making it and, making a dent in it, but we want to be there, and it will be interesting to see who we get, and I can't wait for the draw when it does happen. But I think this is also a great opportunity for Celtic as a club as a whole to be proactive in the transfer market, to get the signings in that Ange Postecoglou wants. Obviously, we'll come on to that, but we've always been very guilty of being reactive instead of proactive, and this is a great opportunity for the club as a whole just to be proactive and be ready and in tip-top shape for those first few games to go all guns blazing and assert our authority on the league.
You touch on proactive transfer activity. Martin, we've seen Carter Vickers come in permanently, which is massive for us. We're waiting on Jota. If he ever comes back from his holidays, would you make a Carter Vickers permanently?
Oh, it's brilliant. mean, we were all desperate. We all fell in love with him last year, and at times when that defence was a little bit ropey, Starfelt being an example where the fans were unsure whether or not he was ever going to be consistently good. Carter Vickers was the one guy that held us together. And the left back and the right back were chopping and changing. We weren't sure about Taylor for a period of time. Juranovic was settling in. Ralston was in and out the team. Carter Vickers was the one constant. And of course, Starfelt came good, and that combination of those two, I think somebody was telling me they didn't get beat, or maybe they did eventually at the end of the season, but they went a lengthy period of time without getting beat. And a lot of credit has to be given to the keeper as well, but certainly the keeper alongside Carter Vickers, that what a difference. You think back, and it is a long time ago, and it's getting further and further at the back of my memory, thankfully. But you think back to Barkas and Duffy and everything, our defence, the whole back line. I mean, we had our captain spending most of the game on the line trying to stop the ball going in the net. That's how bad we were and how bad our defence were. But Carter Vickers and Hart have come in alongside others, and what a difference they've made, and they've allowed us to concentrate on being offensive, on pushing forward, on the midfielders getting up, creating a bit of width and scoring more goals. So what a difference it's made to the team. And if we can get Jota as well, two massive signings those two would be. I mean, imagine the opposite. Imagine both of those leaving the team. It would be disastrous. And how would you replace them? Replace them quickly to be ready for the Champions League. We've got a really settled squad. There's, to the best of my knowledge, there's nobody desperately chapping the manager's door and wanting to leave the club, which again is huge. And forever, well, feels like forever. We've had the opposite. We've had, you go back to Boyata and getting knocked out of the Champions League against the AEK Athens. And I remember that night thinking, in Greece, thinking we should be getting through this. We nearly got through without Boyata, but he would have headed the ball to stop them scoring, and just players like that. And there's been several thereafter that they've not wanted to be there. But the fans are absolutely elated right now. You'd have to go as far back as Martin O'Neill for me to remember the fans being so in love with the club. And yes, it was good. The Brendan Rodgers years were good, but you didn't have a Rangers back then. It was, they weren't really competing with us at all. It was almost too easy, right? So credit to Brendan Rodgers and everything he achieved, and he did achieve a hell of a lot. But the Martin O'Neill, where you had a strong Rangers, I'm not saying they're brilliant, right? But they just got to the European Cup final, so you have to give them some credit that they're back to some extent. The fans are so excited. I was hearing the other day that this is the best. It's a record for season ticket retention, right? So the number of season ticket holders who've renewed their season book is at an all-time high. That doesn't surprise me in the slightest. No. I watched the video the other day that went viral. The guy at his wedding that did his speech and thanked Postecoglou. That's representative of how we all feel right now, right? We're absolutely in love with this guy. We're in love with the team. I mean, you always love your club, don't you? You couldn't fall in love with Celtic if you tried, right? But we're in love with the manager. We're at games, you're enjoying each other's company. There's a real feel-good factor, right? And we cannot wait for it. And domestically, I genuinely think we'll dominate. It's hard to predict because we don't know what Rangers will do, who they'll go out and sign. But people want to come to Celtic and win. That when the players are there, they want to stay. And I cannot wait. Just one last thing I wanted to say about the league, Paul, and we touched on this earlier on, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting the way the fixtures have come out this year, because when it gets to the split, we're in trouble. I think we were all kind of talking about this morning, weren't we? So
almost flipped for last season, innit?
I mean, we do not want to go into that split, right? We want to have it one or as good as one prior to getting there, because we don't know who's going to make the top six, but you can be pretty sure Rangers and Hearts will make it. Now, 3 of our last 5 games should be away from home, and all our hardest away games would have to be played post-split. So you can guarantee that those 3 away games are going to be really, really tough games. You're talking about Aberdeen away, Hearts away, Rangers away, Livingston away. All the hardest games are going to be away. So just interesting to see that. I would rather that than the other way around, because you want all your easier games first to get yourself a lead, don't you? So let's just hope that we don't go into those last 5 games with those 3 tough away games.
We don't want to have points to make up going into the split, that's for sure. It's going to be interesting this season as well to see how the middle of the league develops, because I think as we got towards the back end of last season, wasn't much. Like, Hearts had secured third from about February onwards. They just did no challenge at all. I know like the top 6 race was really close, and then the teams were fighting it out for 4th, and I think 5th even got you a European spot, so that was close. But interesting to see if MD can push Hearts this season, maybe like Aberdeen, Hibs, Dundee United, whoever it would be, because that'll have a bearing on us in the post-split fixtures if other teams have got a lot riding in the games as well.
Well, some of these teams didn't make the top 6, did they, last year? But
Exactly.
in my opinion, the hardest away games, right? Rangers would be away, Hearts would be away, Livingston would be away, Hibs would be away, Aberdeen would be away. I think that's our 5 hardest away games.
Yeah.
And then you get down to Ross County, Kilmarnock would be at home, Motherwell would be away, and St Mirren, United, St Johnstone would be at home. So there can only be 3 away games if it's done fairly, but it could easily be Rangers, Hearts, and Livingston away, for example, if they make the top 6. So, but it'll be wrapped up by then. The league will be won before that.
Hopefully. Kevin, before we finish up, briefly mention transfer activity. Carter Vickers is in. How many more do you think we'll get, and what positions do we need them?
Well, I'm still hoping that we do get Jota over the line, because you've seen the reaction on social media and just by speaking to everybody that you involved with Celtic, just how important Carter Vickers was, and it could be even argued that Carter Vickers is more important than Jota at the back, because we do have attacking options, but having Carter Vickers and Starfelt is still your mainstay going into the Champions League. I'm pretty much happy to go with that to see how it goes. But yeah, if we could get Jota over the line, I'd be very happy with that. That's your 2 most important. And then if we get this, the boy from Lanús, Bernabe, to challenge Taylor, because I think as Taylor, as much as he came on leaps and bounds, it wouldn't have been hard from last season, but he has came on leaps and bounds. He needs a better challenge than Scales. So I think this boy, from what I can see, he sounds like he could certainly play. Obviously, it's went quiet on the Iranian international from Hammarby. I know they're just pretty much starting their season, so it might be a bit more difficult.
We're getting linked with so many players, aren't we?
I know, it's very hard to keep up.
That's in contrast to last season, because I think Ange had singled out all his big targets, and Kyogo's the one that stands out. We just woke up one morning, Kyogo had signed, and nobody had any idea. There was never any rumours, but this summer there's new rumours every day. We're getting linked with everybody.
And then I think, but it's great to see, because you're thinking, well, where do these? You start thinking about it. You think, well, where are these players going to fit? And we know that Benjamin Seagrass is pretty much there, all bar the shouting and the dotting on the line. But I think he's great competition for Joe Hart. I mean, he was a guy that when we were playing Dundee United and we got the last minute winner through Abada, he pretty much single-handedly carried them through that game, because we battled that goal, and Jackie Maka should have had a hat-trick that day with the amount of chances that he passed up. But I think he'll be a good signing, much better than Scott Bain. But apart from that, I think, I don't see there being much transfer activity. There was never going to be a lot, considering what we got in last season. So I think with what we've got, I think we've got good bases, we've got good reserves, and we've got good competition. So a left back, Jota, and a goalkeeper, and I'll be happy.
Martin, do you agree with that? What positions to round us off?
I would say the same. I mean, the main 2 is going to be Jota and Carter Vickers, and player retention. Didn't expect anybody other than those 2 if the club couldn't agree a fee, and all the various parties that are involved. Because it's not just down to the club and the player. There's agents, there's competition with other people being interested. There's obviously the club that owns the player. There's so many parties involved in these deals. But getting those 2 over the line would feel like 2 new signings. I happened to be speaking to some people in Portugal recently, talked about Jota, and he's really well thought of. So it's not just us that love him. He's got a good reputation. I totally agree with what Kevin said about Taylor and covering there. And as much as we think, the keeper will always be there, he could easily get injured, and I'd be delighted if we signed a United keeper. I've been a big admirer of him for a long, long time. Then there was rumours that he was going to Rangers, so it'd be nice if he came to Celtic, and I'm sure we can utilise him as well and give Hart a rest from time to time, and not be concerned that you're seriously compromising that position. I do wonder whether there might be more to come from areas of the world that Ange has worked in, because we've seen the impact some of those players have made. I'm not saying that we should necessarily tap into that market to a greater extent, but I wouldn't be totally surprised if maybe there's a bit more of that to come. You do tend to get more value for money, so you're not having to pay ridiculous sums of money in that particular market. So, and I do also wonder if there might be some more, if we can secure Vickers and Jota. I wonder if there might be another couple of loan deals, because that's becoming more common, isn't it? And Celtic are no different to any other club that has limited resource. That the loan market tends to be utilised more frequently with the right to buy clause. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's another couple of loan deals to come yet, and it'll be interesting to see where they come from. But position-wise, definitely Taylor. Good to have a good solid backup keeper. I mean, we couldn't make up our mind for ages whether it was Barkas or Bain, and neither one of them were consistently good. So definitely keeper, definitely Taylor. Offensively, really pleased now. Defensively, really pleased now, other than the Taylor position. So I'm comfortable. I'm really happy with the team. There's loads. We said it last year. There's loads more to come from this team. We've just started to see what they can achieve. We did not have a period last year where your top players were consistently available, predominantly due to injury. And we've still got that to come, and that's what this season will be all about. It'll be about seeing our best players consistently and seeing them at their best, and I can't wait.
It's a massively exciting prospect, it is. I think we'll get at least 3 or 4 more. Interesting, we've been linked with a few players for South America as well, which is not a market Celtic have historically done well in, or even brought in a high volume of players. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops. That's it for tonight. Like the video, comment with your own thoughts on the fixtures below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you soon. Cheers.